In this video, we're going to go over what exactly is data science. So data science is a big time type of category here that I really want to go over and emphasize what exactly is so unique, so kind of mysterious about it, and what really ultimately it's all about. So let's go ahead and jump into what exactly is data science. So let me give you some numbers here to give you an idea as far as why data science is critically important in today's day and age, and why it's going to continue, gaining popularity and being able to be used in the actual real world, and why it's gaining so much traction in the real world. So in 2013, a study found that 90% of the entirety of the world's data has been created within the previous 2 years. So think about that. This is back in 2013, right? And you had 90% of the entirety of the world's data collected and created at that time, right? I mean, that's massive, right? 90%. And in just 2 years, we've collected 9 times the amount of information than the previous 92,000 years of humankind combined, right? So this is massive here with the influx of new data, right? With the data being created every single day with massive amounts of just huge big data that's available. This is why data science really came into being, right? Because there's so many new data points, so much new information that's being created and laid out that businesses, right, need to be able to understand how to be able to use this data and sift through it and be able to have it be useful for them to make the objective decisions that are going to ultimately increase the bottom line of the business, right? Obviously, this can be used for a variety of different methods, right? You think about data science, in a non-business standpoint where maybe you're working on a project or you have some sort of outcome that you're looking to achieve, or even for non-profit organizations where they're trying to help people. Whatever the, ultimate outcome is that you're trying to achieve, it's going to start out with being able to understand the data sets. What are they ultimately saying? What is the, key different insights, the trends that we're seeing, and which opportunities are we seeing also that are available for us to be able to expand on, right? So very important to understand huge amounts of data have been created and is continuing to be created, and data scientists are the ones that are looking to make sense of that data and be able to, help businesses and really any individual out there that's looking to make sense of their data to be able to make sense of it in a manner that they can, have it be useful for them to increase the bottom line or whatever type of benefit or advantage they're looking to get from the data. So it's projected that 44 zettabytes of data will be created by the end of 2020 and will continue to skyrocket in 2020. So 44 zettabytes of data. I mean, I don't even know if we can put that into any kind of context, but that's just like massive amounts of data. And so again, businesses, companies, all different types of individuals out there are going to want to be able to make sense of this data so that they can stay on top of the competition, they can increase the bottom line, they can, jump into new markets, whatever it is that they're looking to accomplish. The data is just continuing to expand at a massive rate. So what do we do with all this data? How do we make it useful to us? And what are the real world applications? Well, all of these questions are the domain of data science and exactly what you'll be learning in this course, right? So I mentioned that going through this course, you're going to learn about Python. You're going to learn the introduction and understanding of the fundamentals of Python, but really also understand to be able to work, but really also understand how to be able to work with data, how to be able to look through it in a very precise manner, how to be able to make sense of it, and how to get key insights and outcomes, right, that you're looking to accomplish and get from that data, and then be able to explain it to others and to key stakeholders, business owners, in a very precise and understandable way. Because I've been mentioning the fact that a lot of individuals that are taking this course are very much so tech savvy, right? You guys have an understanding of the tech space. You understand, let's say, Python, or you understand various programming languages. However, the average person isn't going to understand various concepts, ideas, languages, right? And so that's why it's important for data scientists or individuals that are working within data to be able to know and understand how to explain things at a very high level and how to make them be outcome focused, right? Because if you're trying to explain various technical concepts and ideas and frameworks to a C-level executive or to a business owner that doesn't know anything about programming, right? All they know is how to run their business, and they want to be able to make sense of data, then you're going to have a hard time with that because they don't understand what you're ultimately saying, because it's a lot of technical jargon, right? So understand that we want to be able to look to take the data, take the key insights, and be able to make them understandable for the average person, right? So very much so important there. And then the field is growing so rapidly and revolutionizing so many industries that it's difficult to really explain in simple definition. I mean, I've tried to explain it through this particular lesson here of exactly what data science is, right? But really it's about just discovering key insights, trends, and patterns from raw data, and then being able to explain that, to actual individuals as far as the data scientists, so they can make, well-informed decisions, right? So this is really what data science is all about here. So another thing to keep in mind here is that data science, since it's so hot and so prevalent nowadays, that you can call it, and it's being known as the oil of the 21st century. So if you think about it, back in the day, you had oil that was just a huge market. It was just massive, right? You can even think about the Industrial Revolution with Andrew Carnegie, where he pretty much was like the richest man in the world, and he was, heading on the Industrial Revolution. So this is pretty much, almost similar here to that particular day and age where you have data science and you have so much information and data being created on a daily basis that this is pretty much the new gold mine, right? So that's why it's great and it's important for you to be in this course learning this material so that you can become a data scientist or, somebody who's working with data on a daily basis. And so it has massive benefits for businesses that are looking to research, bits of information about their customers, about various markets, right? Just think about, your route to working at a particular location, or if you're working remotely, right? Different things such as your Google searches, right? Anytime you're looking for like a restaurant, your Instagram posts, right? All of these bits of pieces of information, right? These data sets are all being tracked, right? Just think about your fitness tracker that's tracking, let's say how many times that you go out for a walk, or how many steps you take, or how many miles you run, right? All of that information is being collected so that you can be able to make understandable insights from it, right? And get key, patterns and trends, and look at the information and be able to understand what are you lacking, what are you doing good in, and be able to look at the information and understand this is how this is working out. These are the things that are going well. These are the problem areas. I recommend, based off of the data, that you make and take XYZ decision, or you take XYZ action, right? Because you're no longer going to be, essentially, deciding what you think you should do, or, what others think that you should do. You're relying on pure data to tell you what exactly is the next best step, right? So very, very powerful there. So data scientists sift through boatloads of data looking for connections and patterns, right? Data science is responsible for bringing us new products, delivering breakthrough insights, and making our lives more convenient, right? So that's ultimately what we're looking to accomplish here, is to make our lives a lot easier, a lot better, a lot more convenient. And that's going to be whether it be, delivering key insights for business growth, delivering key insights for maybe your workout routine, or, let's say somebody's workout routine, if you're maybe like a, coach, or, this is just giving you an example here, but really it's about being able to understand the information, the data, and be able to take away the key insights and understandings of what you should do or shouldn't do, right, based on the information. And so data scientists must be skilled in everything from data engineering, math, statistics, advanced computing, and visualizations to be able to effectively sift through masses of information and communicate only the most important bits that will drive innovation and efficiency, right? Just like I've been mentioning here, it's really about the data scientist to, have the expertise, the skill set to be able to sift through the data, right? Because it's massive, huge amounts of data, right? We're talking petabytes of massive amounts of data. And so it's the role of the data scientist to be able to sift through all of that, data there and be able to understand the key insights and then be able to communicate those to the key stakeholders, as far as only the most important bits of information that's going to increase ultimately the bottom line, right? Increase efficiency, drive innovation. But ultimately, when you think about it, it's about, increasing the bottom line, increasing the sales, the revenue, right? The growth of the business. And obviously this can be for, any type of area that you're focused on. Let's say you're focused on, health and wellness, and you want to, understand different metrics for different people that work out, that don't work out, right? It doesn't really matter what data you're looking through or you're working with. But for the most part, when you're a data scientist, you're going to be working with businesses and you're going to help them make key effective decisions based on information that you find and have gathered, right, through the, sifting of the actual data itself. Okay, so the data science has generally 5 different stages of a life cycle, okay? So the first one here is the capture. This is where you have the data acquisition, where you're, getting the data, you're being able to capture it, you're understanding it. And then the next step is the maintain. So this is where you're warehousing the data, you're cleaning it, you're processing it, right? You're setting up the data architecture. And then next one is the process here. So this is where you're data mining, you're working with clustering, classification, data modeling, data summarization. And then the next one here is communicate. So this is where you've gone through those, first initial 3 stages. And then now you're reporting the information, you're visualizing it, right? You're using business intelligence, decision making. And then finally here, you're analyzing the information, right? You have the exploratory, confirmatory, predictive analysis. You have regression, text mining, qualitative analysis. So all of these 5 stages require different techniques, programs, and in some cases, skill sets, right? And you going through this course here, you're going to learn all of these different stages, right? You're going to have a basic and fundamental and then expert level understanding of all these different stages, because in order for you to be a successful data scientist, you have to understand these. You have to know what these, mean. How are they used in a practical manner? And then also understanding the theory behind them, right? And so you're going to learn all of that in this course. And I'm really excited for you to be able to start learning this material. When we get into the coding, you're going to start seeing how we actually dive into writing the code and making sense of the information and working with different data to be able to allow us to find out key insights for us to be able to work with and make sense of, right? So that's going to be it here for this one, and we'll see you on the next one.